I always made sure to leave the house every morning looking like a man who had it all together. My name is Noah Greaves. I'm 36 years old, and I live in an upscale neighborhood in Westchester, New York. Most people around here know me as an IT consultant for a global financial firm. They see me at my son's hockey games on weekends, at the occasional barbecue, chatting with the neighbors about yard maintenance and traffic. But those glimpses of my life? They're all just a carefully crafted show. Truth is, my real work is a lot messier than lines of code and conference calls. My job is to keep people's secrets buried deep, and I've been doing it since my days in military intelligence. There's a certain comfort in the predictability of data, in the certainty of ones and zeros. But even I know that sometimes, the worst secrets are the ones that hide in plain sight. It was a cool October morning when I first felt the chill of suspicion creeping in. Ethan, my 15-year-old son, had already left for school. Lauren, my wife, was bustling around the kitchen, her phone buzzing with what she claimed were work emails. She was always so polished, so put together, like the perfectly matched suit to my crisp tie. "You're going to be late," she said lightly, her voice calm but distant. She was wearing the cream-colored blazer I bought her last Christmas, the one she said she loved because it made her feel powerful. "I know," I said, giving her a peck on the cheek. "Late meetings tonight?" "Yeah, probably," she replied, as not quite meeting mine. "We're reviewing a big merger at the office." I watched her for a moment, her hands fluttering nervously as she poured coffee. She used to tell me everything. But lately, there were gaps in her stories, small details that didn't add up. Missed calls she brushed off. Late nights that never made sense. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that the life we'd built together was still real. But the part of me that spent years in intelligence work couldn't let it go. I had to know. So, while Lauren was busy with her merger, I dug a little deeper. It didn't take long to confirm what my gut had already suspected. She wasn't working late. She wasn't even at the office. My wife, my perfect, elegant wife, was lying to me. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I played the part of the doting husband, keeping my questions quiet while I gathered the pieces. I watched her come home at odd hours, watched her eyes flicker with something like guilt when she thought I wasn't looking. Each time she lied, it stung a little more. It's funny how easy it is to believe the perfect facade, how we trick ourselves into thinking we know someone, that we're safe in the life we've built together. But I knew the truth was never that simple. So I kept watching and waiting, telling myself that when the time came, I'd be ready to pull back the curtain, to find out what was really hiding behind that perfect smile. Because I wasn't just some clueless husband. I was Noah Greaves, and I wasn't about to let anyone, even my wife, play me for a fool. The next morning, I walked into my office in Midtown Manhattan, the city already pulsing with energy. From the outside, everything about my life seemed stable. But as I walked through the glass doors and into the marble-floored lobby, my mind was stuck on Lauren. Every detail of the previous night replayed in my head, a quiet loop I couldn't shut off. My assistant, Paula, greeted me with her usual efficient smile. She handed me a sleek black dossier. "New client," she said, adjusting her glasses. "High net worth, wants it handled discreetly." I nodded, taking the file from her, but I barely glanced at it. My mind wasn't in the office today. My mind was on the way Lauren's voice had trembled slightly when she lied to me. The way she had slipped her phone into her bag like it held secrets she couldn't bear to share. I closed the door to my office and sat down at my desk, the city skyline spread out beyond the windows. I flipped open the file, but the numbers and legal jargon felt meaningless. Instead, I pulled up my own private project, Lauren's personnel file from her law firm. It wasn't hard to get. Years of working with financial secrets had taught me exactly where to look and how to leave no trace. I found the patterns almost immediately. Late meetings that didn't match her calendar. Lunches with Lucas Vance, a colleague from her past who had suddenly reappeared in her present. At first, I thought it was just an affair. I told myself that maybe I could live with that, some brief, stupid mistake that didn't matter in the long run. But the deeper I looked, the more I saw the cracks widening. Lauren's past in Chicago, the city she never wanted to talk about, suddenly seemed deliberate. Like she had carefully chosen me, chosen our marriage, because it was the perfect cover for whatever she was really after. I clicked through financial records, the data feeding my suspicion like oxygen to a flame. Lucas Vance wasn't just a fling, he had a history, one that reeked of manipulation and greed. Court records, old settlements, whispered rumors of ruined marriages and stolen fortunes. It was a strange thing, seeing Lauren's life through the cold lens of data. The woman I loved was a puzzle, each piece fitting together in ways I hadn't imagined. And with every new document, every bank statement that didn't add up, I felt the betrayal tightening around my chest like a vice. I sat back in my chair, the city's hum lost behind the glass. My marriage wasn't just a casualty of infidelity, it was the stage for a scheme. A carefully crafted performance, and I was the willing audience, clapping along like a fool. Paula buzzed in again. Noah, the client's on line 1. Wants to move quickly. I didn't answer right away. I looked at the reflection in the window, my face calm, my suit crisp, but inside, I was already somewhere else. Somewhere darker. Tell them I'll call back, I said finally, my voice quiet. Because right now, the only problem I wanted to bury was the one I saw in the mirror. The man who thought he knew everything, blindsided by the woman he thought he could trust. By the next week, I had pieced together enough of the puzzle to see the full picture. I had spent nights in my home office, the glow of the computer screen reflecting off half-empty coffee mugs. Each document I uncovered, each shady financial transfer, chipped away at any lingering doubt. Lauren and Lucas weren't just having an affair. They were orchestrating a slow bleed of my company's funds. My own consulting contracts, projects I thought were airtight, had been quietly siphoned off through shell companies, transfers disguised as routine payments. They'd been using me as their personal ATM, all under the pretense of a picture-perfect marriage. I stared at the numbers, the web of transactions that proved beyond any doubt that this wasn't some petty betrayal. It was war. And if they thought I'd roll over and play the part of the clueless husband, they didn't know me at all. That night, I called Damon. He was an old friend from my military days, a man who understood the world behind the headlines. Damon specialized in digital illusions, believable ghosts that could slip into the lives of anyone we wanted. I need your help, I said when he answered. My voice was steady, but he heard the weight behind it. Lauren, he guessed. I didn't need to say it out loud. Damon and I had been through enough together to read between the lines. Yeah, I said. She's working with someone. They're stealing from me. He let out a low whistle. You want this quiet or loud? Quiet, for now, I said. But I want them to feel it. I want them to see what it's like when the person you thought was safe decides to fight back. Damon didn't ask for details. He knew I'd tell him what he needed to know. I'll set up a vault, he said. Encrypted. Only you and I have access. I leaned back in my chair, the faint hum of the air conditioning blending with the soft tap of Damon's keyboard on the other end. I want everything, I said. Recordings, messages, digital footprints. If they're going to take me down, they're going to do it staring me in the eye. And that's what we did. For the next few days, I played the role of the devoted husband. I smiled over dinner, went to Ethan's hockey games, listened to Lauren's carefully crafted lies about late nights at the office. But every free moment, I was working with Damon, turning the tables on the two people who had made me their target. We planted digital triggers on Lucas's accounts, tiny pieces of code that would feed me every message he sent. We pulled old surveillance footage from the security cameras around my office, images of Lauren slipping in and out with documents she had no right to have. Each new piece of evidence went into the vault, a growing testament to the truth they thought they could bury. And through it all, I watched Lauren. I watched the way she smiled at me, the way she said, I love you, with just enough conviction to almost make me believe it. I watched her because I wanted to remember exactly who she was when the mask finally slipped. Late one night, as I sat in front of my computer, the final pieces of the plan fell into place. Damon's voice came through my earbuds, low and calm. It's done, he said. They'll never see you coming. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt ready. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't the man being played. I was the man playing the game. And I was going to make sure Lauren and Lucas understood exactly who they were up against. A few days later, I watched the first seeds of my plan take root. Damon's creation, a digital ghost we called Marcus Fallon, was already slipping into their lives. Marcus was the kind of threat that didn't need a face. He was a name, a presence, a whisper in the dark. And Lauren and Lucas had no idea he wasn't real. It started with a voicemail. Lucas checked his phone after a late meeting, an eerie, muffled voice saying, I know what you're doing, Lucas. Marcus is watching. Damon made sure it sounded just right, calm enough to be chilling, vague enough to be believable. Next came the emails. Lauren got the first one at her office. The subject line was empty. The message? Just a single sentence. Tell Lucas I'm coming for what's mine. She stared at the screen for almost a full minute before she slammed her laptop shut. I watched her panic from afar. I had access to everything now, her phone, her work laptop, even the security cameras in her firm's parking garage. She didn't know it yet, but there was nowhere she could hide. The next move was small but effective. I had Damon insert Marcus's name into the background check database at her firm, just a faint mention of Marcus Fallon, harassment complaint. Enough to rattle her if she happened to see it. And she did. I made sure of it. Late one night, she called Lucas, her voice tight with fear. Have you seen these messages? Who is this? What does he know? I listened from my office, her voice shaking through the hidden feed I'd planted in her phone. Lucas tried to sound brave, but I could hear it, the crack in his voice. It's nothing, he said, though he didn't sound like he believed it. We'll handle it. They were already unraveling. And I hadn't even started. Over the next week, Marcus showed up everywhere they turned. A shadow caught on a security camera near Lauren's car. A dark figure standing across the street from Lucas's office in the rain. All illusions, of course. Damon was a master at stitching together old footage and digital overlays. But to Lauren and Lucas, it was real enough to keep them up at night. And then there were the notes. Simple, handwritten messages slipped under Lauren's office door. I know everything. Marcus. She showed one to Lucas in their secret late-night meeting at a diner downtown. She was pale, her hands trembling. You have to do something, she said. He knows about us. Lucas swallowed hard, looking around the diner like he expected Marcus to walk in at any second. I will, he said, though I could see it. He was as scared as she was. And me? I watched it all unfold with a quiet, cold satisfaction. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like the bad guy. They were the ones who had decided to turn my life into a lie. Now they were learning that lies have teeth. The best part was how easily they fell into the roles I'd written for them. Lucas, the arrogant opportunist who suddenly realized he was out of his depth. Lauren, the perfect wife cracking under the weight of her own secrets. And me, the quiet husband who was always one step ahead. Every night, I sat in my office, the flicker of the security feeds lighting up the room. I listened to them panic. I watched them look over their shoulders. And I knew this was only the beginning, because they hadn't just stolen money from me. They had tried to steal my life. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not now. Not ever. A few days later, Lauren finally cracked. She walked into our kitchen one evening, her eyes wide and red from crying. I was at the counter, pretending to read through some work emails on my tablet. She stood there for a moment, her fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve, and then she spoke. Noah, she said, her voice trembling, there's something I need to tell you. I set the tablet down and looked at her, careful to keep my face neutral. What's wrong? I asked, like I didn't already know. She took a shaky breath. I think someone's watching me. His name is Marcus Fallon. He's been sending these messages, these threats. I leaned forward, letting concern crease my forehead. Marcus Fallon? I repeated, my voice low and calm. Have you told the police? She shook her head. No. I'm too scared. Lucas. He thinks it's just someone playing a prank, but I don't think so. I think it's real. I reached out, taking her hand in mine. You're right to be scared, I said softly. But I promise, I'll take care of this. I'll keep you safe. She looked at me, relief flooding her face. In that moment, she needed a protector. And I was more than willing to play the part. Later that night, I met with Lucas under the pretense of helping. He looked nervous when I walked in, his eyes darting around the shadowy corner of the hotel bar where he'd chosen to meet. I slid into the booth across from him, my expression serious. I heard about Marcus Fallon, I said, my tone clipped and businesslike. Lauren told me everything. Lucas tried to act calm, but he couldn't hide the sweat on his forehead. I don't know what's going on, he said. We didn't do anything to deserve this. I almost laughed at that. Didn't do anything? I thought. But I kept my voice steady. I can help, I said. I've dealt with threats like this before. But you need to trust me. You need to let me handle this. He nodded quickly. Yes, of course. Just tell me what to do. That was all I needed. Over the next week, I became their shield. The man they turned to with every new threat, every fresh wave of panic. I set up security measures around our house, cameras and motion sensors that I told Lauren would keep her safe. In reality, they were there to make sure I could control every angle, every bit of information that entered her world. In the evenings, I sat in my office, headphones in, listening to the recordings I'd gathered from their frantic phone calls. Lucas's voice, full of fear. Lauren's, soft and broken. We need to get rid of him, she said one night, her voice almost a whisper. We need to make him go away. And that was exactly what I was doing, though not in the way they expected. Lauren started to lean on me more. She'd find reasons to come into my office late at night, slipping her hand onto my shoulder as she thanked me for keeping her safe. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered once, her breath warm on my neck. I nodded, my face grave. "I'll always protect you," I said. "No matter what." But in the back of my mind, I was already thinking about the endgame. About how easily they trusted me now, how completely they relied on the man they thought was still just the devoted husband. They had no idea that every step they took was being watched, every word they spoke was recorded. And as I sat there listening to their plans, to the lies they told themselves to justify what they'd done, I realized something. In their eyes, I was still the man they thought they could manipulate. The man who would keep them safe, no matter how far they pushed. They didn't see the man behind the mask. The man who was already 3 steps ahead. The man who had turned their perfect little world into a trap they'd never escape. And as I turned off the recordings and looked out the window at the quiet street beyond, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But not enough to stop. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about control. And I was done letting them have any part of mine. It was a Friday night when I decided to make Marcus Fallon real. Damon had everything ready. The last piece was mine to set in motion. I sent Ethan to his friend's house for the weekend, telling him it was a hockey sleepover. He didn't question it. He was just happy to spend time away. I watched him get on his bike and pedal down the block, the late afternoon light slanting across the yard. I felt a flicker of guilt, but I shoved it away. Ethan didn't need to be here for what I was about to do. Damon arrived just after dark, dressed in all black, a mask pulled low over his face. He gave me a single nod when I opened the door, no words needed. We both knew what this was. It was the final act of the show we'd been writing together. I stood back as he went to work. He moved through the house like a ghost, pulling open drawers, knocking over furniture, leaving just enough chaos to make it look real. He shattered a vase in the living room, the crash echoing through the halls. He tipped over a lamp, ripped a cushion, but never once left a trace of who he was. I stood in the corner of the kitchen, my hands clenched at my sides, the tension in my chest coiling tighter and tighter. The whole time, I kept my phone to my ear, listening to Lauren's frantic voice on the other end. She was at the office late, of course, some client emergency she'd invented. She thought she was so clever, so careful. She had no idea how much I knew. "What was that?" she gasped when she heard the sound of glass breaking in the background. "Noah, what's happening?" "Stay at work," I said calmly, my voice steady even as Damon hurled a chair across the room. "The police are already on the way." She went silent. I could almost hear her breathing on the line, shallow and quick. Is it him?" she whispered. "Marcus." "Yes," I said. "It's him." I ended the call and slipped my phone into my pocket. Damon looked at me, his eyes sharp above the mask. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. "Get out of here," I said. "I'll handle the rest." He disappeared into the night, just like he'd come. I took a moment to breathe, to calm the adrenaline still buzzing in my veins. Then I picked up the phone and dialed 911. The police arrived within 15 minutes, 2 SWAT cars pulling up to the curb, lights flashing. I stood in the doorway, my shirt rumpled, a cut on my cheek I'd made with a broken picture frame for effect. I told them a man had broken in, that he'd threatened me and said he'd be back for my wife. They nodded, took notes, asked the usual questions. They believed me because I had given them exactly what they expected to see. By the time Lauren came home, the house was crawling with uniforms. She ran up the driveway, her face pale, her hair a mess. "Noah," she cried, her eyes wide with fear. "Are you okay?" I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. "I'm fine," I murmured. "I won't let him hurt you. I promise." She clung to me, shaking. "What does he want?" she sobbed. "Why us?" I pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "Because you and Lucas gave him a reason," I said quietly. "And now he won't stop." She flinched, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to confess everything right there. But she didn't. She was too scared. And that was exactly what I wanted. Over the next hour, I played the part of the shell-shocked husband. I gave the police every detail they asked for, weaving the story so tight there was no room for doubt. Lauren followed me from room to room, her eyes darting around at the mess we'd created. When the police finally left, she sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. "Noah," she whispered, her voice small. "What if he comes back?" I crouched in front of her, my hand on her knee. "Then we make him stop," I said simply. "But first, you and Lucas need to come clean. You need to tell me everything." She looked up at me, tears shining in her eyes. She nodded, slowly. "I will," she said. "I'll tell you everything. Just don't let him hurt Ethan. Please." I gave her a small, reassuring smile. "I won't," I said. But you need to be honest with me. It's the only way to end this. She nodded again, her shoulders slumping in defeat. And I knew, right then, that I had them both exactly where I wanted them. Because when people are scared, they'll do anything to make the fear go away, even if it means giving up everything they thought they could keep. A few days later, I arranged a meeting at our home. The house was spotless, the chaos of the stage break-in scrubbed away, but the memory of it still hung in the air. I could see it in Lauren's eyes when she walked in, her gaze flicking to every shadow, every window. Lucas arrived not long after, looking pale and jumpy. He'd lost the smug confidence he used to wear like a second skin. Now he just looked like a man waiting for the axe to fall. I led them both into my study. The room was warm and quiet, the door closing behind us with a soft click that felt final. I sat behind my desk, folding my hands and letting the silence stretch out until it wrapped around all of us like a vice. Sit, I said calmly. They obeyed. Lauren swallowed hard. Noah, I held up a hand to stop her. Don't lie, I said evenly. Not today. Lucas shifted in his chair. What do you want from us? I leaned back, tapping a small remote on my desk. The monitor behind me flickered to life, filling the room with the cold glow of surveillance footage. Lauren's office. Lucas's apartment. Bank statements. Phone recordings. Every secret they'd thought they could hide. Lauren let out a soft gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. Lucas looked like he wanted to bolt, but there was nowhere to go. I know everything, I said, my voice quiet. The money you stole from my contracts. The shell companies. The story you were building to paint me as a neglectful father. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. Noah, Save it, I said coldly. I gave you everything. And you used that trust to steal from me, to betray me. So now, here's how this ends. I slid a folder across the desk to her. Divorce papers. Custody agreements. A waiver of alimony, of any claim to my business. Her name already signed at the bottom, Lucas's too. I had forged them, of course. But that didn't matter. They would sign for real, or I would make sure the world saw every dirty secret they'd tried to bury. Lucas picked up the folder with trembling hands. You're bluffing, he said weakly. I shook my head. No, I'm giving you a choice. Sign, and you walk away with your reputation intact. Don't, and I'll make sure everyone sees who you really are. The fraud, the manipulator, the liar. Lauren's breath hitched. What about Ethan? She whispered. He stays with me, I said. No visitation. No contact. You don't deserve to be a part of his life. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Please, Noah. You made this choice, I said, my voice like ice. You and Lucas decided what mattered to you, and now you get to live with it. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Lauren reached for a pen with a shaking hand. She signed her name, the sound of the pen scratching across the paper loud in the quiet room. Lucas followed, his face pale and sweaty. When it was done, I took the folder back and stood. It's over, I said. You have until tomorrow to collect your things. After that, you're gone. Lauren just nodded, her shoulders slumping. Lucas looked like he might be sick. They stood and walked to the door, their steps slow and heavy. At the threshold, Lauren turned back to me, her eyes red. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't answer. I just watched them leave, the door closing behind them with a quiet finality. An hour later, Ethan came home from his friend's house, full of stories about hockey and video games. He didn't know that the life he was walking back into was already changed forever. I watched him kick off his shoes and run up to his room, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Because I had done what I had to do. I had protected my son, and I had ended the game they tried to play with my life. And for now, that was enough. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, the house quiet and still. I got dressed in the dark, the hum of the coffee maker the only sound breaking the silence. I didn't feel triumphant, not really. Just resolved. Lauren was already gone when I walked back upstairs. Her side of the closet was empty, the hangers swaying slightly as if they'd been disturbed by a breeze. The suitcase by the front door was gone too. She'd left without a word, just like I told her to. I didn't bother calling her. There was nothing left to say. Lucas wasn't so lucky. By noon, federal agents had shown up at his office. They walked him out in handcuffs while his coworkers watched, their whispers following him down the hall. Damon had made sure every shady transaction was traced right back to Lucas. His face was pale, his eyes wide with panic as they led him away. I watched it all from my phone, the live news coverage of final confirmation that it was really over. Back at home, Ethan was still asleep when I walked into his room. He looked so peaceful, tangled in his blankets, his hair messy on the pillow. I sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, just watching him breathe. When he finally stirred and opened his eyes, he smiled up at me. "Morning, Dad," he mumbled, his voice soft with sleep. "Morning, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. "How about pancakes today?" His face lit up. "Yes, please." It was a small moment, but it was everything. Because no matter how messy everything else was, Ethan was still my son. Still the one good thing I'd managed to protect from the lies and the greed. Later that afternoon, Lauren came back one last time, but not for me. She didn't even step inside. She waited by the curb while her friend loaded the last of her things into the trunk of a dusty sedan. She looked at the house with a strange, haunted expression, like she was trying to remember how she'd ended up here. I watched from the window, my arms crossed, my face blank. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. When the car pulled away, she didn't look back. And that was it. A few days later, I took the digital vault Damon had built and locked it away in the safe behind my office bookshelf. It wasn't for leverage anymore. It was for closure. A record of everything that had happened, sealed away where no one could ever twist it around on me. Ethan and I settled into a new routine. Hockey practice, school drop-offs, quiet dinners where we actually talked. He didn't ask about his mom, and I didn't offer anything more than he needed to know. She made choices, I said simply. And those choices meant she couldn't stay. He nodded, accepting it the way kids do. There was a kind of relief in that. In knowing that for him, life could go on without all the messy truths I'd spent so long unraveling. At night, after he was asleep, I'd sit in my study with a glass of whiskey, the soft glow of the desk lamp spilling across the papers I used to pore over so carefully. Now, they were just reminders of a life I'd outgrown. A life I'd survived. I thought about forgiveness sometimes, about whether there was any path back from the kind of betrayal Lauren and Lucas had chosen. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew there wasn't. Some things don't deserve forgiveness. Some things only deserve an ending. And that's what I'd given them. In the quiet of those nights, I finally let myself feel it, the calm that comes after the storm. The simple relief of knowing that no matter how twisted things got, I had held my ground. I had protected what mattered. And in the end, I hadn't just survived. I had won. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all I needed. Because as I locked away the last of the evidence, I realized something. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about never letting anyone steal my life again. And with that final thought, I turned out the light, took a deep breath, and walked upstairs to join my son. Because for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly who I was and exactly what I was willing to fight for.